Hey everyone, sorry that you can't come to class today, but you still get to learn about hair. And then when you come to class next time, we'll get to do a lab and you'll get to look at hair under a microscope and stuff like that. So let's start talking about a couple of things. First of all, before we talk about hair specifically, in forensics, there's a couple of different types of evidence that you want to know about. So the first type is called class evidence. And this is evidence that you can't link to a specific individual. So an example of this might be like a shoe print. We could figure out what type of shoe made that print, but there's lots of every single type of shoe in the world. So we wouldn't be able to link that to a specific person. But individual evidence can be linked to a specific person. So that could be something like a fingerprint or DNA would be the most obvious examples of that. Hair is class evidence. When you look at hair, you can usually tell what color it is, obviously. You can even tell the race of the person, sometimes from the hair. But two blonde people, it would be really hard to tell them apart by their hair. So it's class evidence unless you get the hair follicle. That's kind of like where the hair is attached to your body. And if you have the hair follicle, then you might have DNA, and that could be individual evidence. So we're going to talk about some hair anatomy. So if we look at this picture on the left, this long part of the hair, that's called the shaft, and then the root is the bottom part, and you can see how it is in the follicle there. And there's some other things. This muscle right here helps the hair stand up on end. And there's some glands and things, but what you really, really want to know are these three parts of the hair right here. So if we zoom in on the shaft, the outside of that shaft is called the cuticle. The inner part is called the cortex. The cortex is the part that has the pigment that makes your hair a certain color. And then inside the cortex is the medulla. Okay. And these are what those parts look kind of like under a microscope. So the cuticle is very narrow, and then the cortex is pretty wide. And in this example, the medulla is pretty thin. Depending on the animal, the medulla can be bigger. And then sometimes there are these things in the cortex called ovoid bodies. So this little circle right here. And that can help us identify what type of animal the hair is from. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple of different types of cuticles. So this first type is called a coronal cuticle, and it is found in small rodents and in bats. And I actually have some bat hair at school that we'll look at under the microscope, and you can see it. It looks like this. They look like cups stacked up on each other under the microscope. Okay, another type of hair cuticle is spinous. People say this type is petal-like, so it's just got these little petals. And this is found in seals and cats. And this is what it looks like under the microscope. It's a little bit hard to tell, but you can see these kind of spines coming off. So that's why it's called spinous. And then the last type is called imbricate. And it looks kind of just like bricks stacked on top of each other. And that is found in humans and also dogs and horses and other animals. And it looks kind of boring under the microscope. That's what it looks like. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the medulla. The medullary index is how much of the shaft the medulla occupies. So if it's smaller, that means the medulla is very, very thin. But if it's bigger, then the medulla takes up more of the space. So let's talk about a couple different types of hair. Human hair, again, has imbricate cuticle. And then the medulla is really hard to see. The medullary index is going to be 1/3 or less. Squirrel hair is really interesting looking. It looks like sticks stacked horizontally on top of each other. Bat hair, again, has those coronal scales. Cow hair has a really thick medulla with ovoid bodies. And horse hair has a really, really thick medulla with no ovoid bodies. And my free recording time is up. So that's the end of this video. Have a good day.